for John to talk about the 2014 ballot, I just kind of want to get a sense, because yes, I think that John's right. The first thing we need to do tomorrow is write a thank you letter to President Chu for holding these meetings. And then I think that we also need to schedule one as soon as possible, because I think that we're going to have our first opportunity to get public comment in when they rehear that 1,000-foot thing that he added at the end of the last hearing. That's going to be our first little opportunity, and I think that they never expected us to turn out who we did turn out that day. I think the expectation was to keep everybody separated and not have the ability to organize, you know?
Is there going to be a motion to return that NCD thing back to the Land Use Committee?
I don't think so. What we heard from David Chu today was that there's a lot, again, they're saying that thing where they have that deferential to the supervisor in the district, and I think that unfortunately the vote is already far gone. We're probably going to lose that today. This is the second reading today, and we're probably going to lose that. And I'm sure you're aware, Brian, that there was a sunshine, that there was some competitive business interest pushing against as well. So, I mean, it's really sad to me that
that's the first I've heard of that. It has to do with what? Kevin Reed?
Right. There was a sunshine request put into planning to find out who was, you know, complaining about the zoning, and Kevin Reed's name was on the paperwork. And to me, that's really disappointing. I really don't like to see people doing mischievous things like that.
And speaking of why the previous task force had the reputation that it did with the Board of Supervisors, remember Kevin Reed was one of the original members of that very task force. So.
Well, I think the whole objective was to kind of dismantle it and take our powers away and return them to attorneys and lobbyists so that we wouldn't be able to have a communal table.
It's not a matter that trust is not the word, but you just need to be close and in constant communication. Yeah. So I can't reiterate how important it is to follow up with him immediately and put action items on the letterhead. You know, say we're going to do this, this, and this by such and such a date, or I need this from you, or I need to schedule the agenda for the next meetings through the end of the year by Friday. You know, some little kinds of things so you're kind of driving the conversation a little bit and that kind of thing. Let me just talk in general statements about what we're doing, because there's a lot of crossover here, and I just want to give you an idea of what we're doing, so how it may apply to what's happening here. At the state level, we filed a secondary version to the MCLR document. Just to update you and everybody, just in general terms, there is one document that's already filed with the state. They're already collecting signatures. That's a CCHI initiative. That's a grassroots effort, a volunteer effort trying to get signatures in the language is somewhat limited. So we don't feel that it's a comfortable document to make it to the ballot and to address everything that we did. In the MCLR document, Marijuana Control Legalization and Revenue Act, we were specific about everything current. We not only addressed the Inland Empire case that addressed all the zoning issues, we addressed the Cole memo, the Department of Justice document and restrictions and criteria for states. So understanding that if we do put legislation in, and if we're looking at this at the federal level, you know, there is, I think it's 1256, the federal document that supports states' rights for this. It's gaining support. There's about 20 states going at the federal level that telling the feds to lay off states and let them support their own efforts here. So we're trying to put this in place. We're trying to meet the guidelines. In particular, a couple points that I want to mention to you here. Number one, we're still open for revisions. That's why we are by far the best, most viable option going on for 14 right now. I did mention that we're in communication with the ACLU and others because there is some leaning towards 14 now. All the talk, as I said, has been to 16 up until just recently, but not only the polling data, I actually did have a chance to give Mr. Chu a copy of my recent executive summary on polling data, but everywhere, whether it's Gallup polls, Pew polls, our own Google surveys and documents, in the high 60s percentage. And when you're looking for voting targets, you're looking for a 10% margin or a 10-point margin for success. So funders are now knocking on our doors, because before they said, you got 55%, it's just like Prop 19, you know, you're gonna, something like that, a lot of that talk. That talk has gone away, and it's been up to us and everybody here. You can see how it's changed now. Now, everybody's talking about 14. Other states are talking about jumping on board. So what happened in California is we don't have a very good movement. We all know that. We're the greatest state in the world, greatest nation in some cases comparatively, but our advocacy movement is splintered and always has been in California. In 2012, we had 5 different...
It's not my fault?
See, no, not this time, I'll think of something. No, we had 6 different efforts ultimately to try to get on the ballot in 2012. When that was happening, we knew that was a failure. Anybody understand business? There was no way. You're going to split the advocacy, you're going to split the language, you're going to confuse the public, you're going to split the funding, everything. So our goal a year and a half ago when we started doing this was to try to consolidate people and coordinate and get a cooperative unification between advocacy. Didn't quite work out the way we wanted. We're still working through that even to this day. I won't bore you with the details of that, but our movement alone has been dysfunctional to some extent, but we're correcting it. We are, as I said, down to the final 2 documents we believe. We don't think that anybody else will file it this last minute. We have it for another 2 weeks. We're opening up the document for different language. So I know it's not necessarily coming out of this room, but you have something specific you want to add to our current language at the state level that'll address what's going on here. You want to look at it. So again, I'm not expecting anybody in this room necessarily. Mike and I have had some exchanges at times, and emails and other things, so you definitely have some ideas, but I'm putting the offer out again that you can go to our site, you can look at the language again, and you can still provide input probably till the first week of January. If you looked at Prop 9, the old Marzy's law, the one that the Patients' Right law, that back in 2007, they filed that in December 7th, and they got 150,000 more signatures than we need. So there's room to do this still. We're still able to get a current document with people's support and community input, so nobody can say that we don't have. And what we're doing through all this period, we're meeting with groups like you today and this week also. Other proponents of our initiative, Vijay Kute and Dave Hodges, are in Los Angeles this week. There's a fundraiser and a meet and greet in Los Angeles. Dave's in San Diego Wednesday, tomorrow. I'll be in San Jose here in a couple more weeks, and we're doing this final push, again, more of a community outreach. Same thing we've been speaking since day one, if you want more input. So, I don't mean to belabor that point. The idea is specific to what's happening here. Let me just make a couple notes. Can I just comment on a couple things in the initiative that are specific to zoning? Obviously, zoning is a key issue, and one of the main points of our initiative, if I can, everybody here, give me just 1 second. Make sure I'm on my right page here. And this will support possibly what you're talking about. And again, I encourage everybody to read through this when you have time. Again, discrimination is prohibited, except as provided no person shall refuse to provide services or benefits or increase the charge for services and benefits, utilities, banking, and insurance. Key points, it's left out for the other initiatives and it addresses all these things. So when you're talking about discrimination from services, PG&E, I heard the PG&E discussion here. How can you get a safety inspection and do those kind of things? There's fire codes and fire laws. We want to uphold those. So we're going to say that you can still process your cannabis in any way you want, but you have to adhere to fire codes. Well, you want to have a safety inspection? No more discrimination. They can't say that you can't bank with them, you can't discriminate. That's a key point.
Yes.
So we're going to eliminate discrimination from these agencies. So this is a real industry. Let's not talk about it as a oddball industry or anything different than any other medicine or product that we're going to do. Because again, this initiative is going to open it up for adult use. Even though we're having our full discussion here about medical cannabis, we're going to support medical cannabis. The key to this document is to support 215, is to enhance and clarify all medical laws as they are now. So everything that we know is a good law is reinforced by this document.
What you're talking about, are you talking about it on a state level or a federal level?
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, I didn't have a chance to, I'm working with the state level initiative. I'm the proponent for the state level
Because a lot of
initiative.
our problems are coming from the federal level.
Yeah, I was
That's
gonna ask
correct.
about the banking issue.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's a total bad issue.
That is a very ugly issue, and we know at the federal level, there's some things being addressed there. What's difficult for all of us, it's difficult to get involved in all these different things. I can sit here and talk about just San Francisco, which I don't know a lot about, and you guys know all of it, and I can talk about the state, but there's all these peripheral federal level things too. As an example, we know the effort that they've been trying to do to reschedule, ACE's efforts and all that kind of effort too. There's different kinds of things that happen at the federal level that may or may not necessarily allow that. There's international conventions, there's international treaties. So there's a lot of different things going on at the federal level that I'm not real conversant on, but you're right, you have to be cognizant of it. Just what we're doing from the state down to the city, we're looking to make sure that we're doing things at the city level that are somewhat cohesive with what the feds are doing. And that's why we address the 8 points of the Cole memo in our document as well. Cannabis that is sold for dietary or medical purposes shall not be subject to any sales or use taxes. Use tax does apply to social consumption, because we're allowing the opening of a social consumption and social stores, so you can be able to buy a product down at the store just like any other. That's obviously a taxable product. What's the whole point here? The people that are supportive of CCHI and that concept of free the plant, it's just a plant, we should do that. We live in a lawful society, we live in a regulated society, we have to make certain compromises. This is a product we're talking about, so we want to do it that way. So where is all this billion-dollar revenue going to come from that everybody's been talking about in California all this
The
time?
recreational market.
The recreational market certainly, or the licensing of the growers, and to carry that on. And this is something that you should all be very proud, not only what Shona personally has done, but your group and your efforts. She worked very hard with us to make sure that we put a compassionate use program built into this. There are different licensing structures. Yes, how do we generate revenue? You're going to have the taxation at the commercial side, but at the grower level, you're going to have fees, not taxation, but fees, just like other products that you manufacture or deal with in California. So there's different fees based on the different providers, and we've been input a compassionate use provider. If you give away a certain amount of your product, or you give away a certain amount of your product at cost, you fit in that, and you're without fees as a provider. And not only that, we put another key point in there. You want equivalent quality, because we all know when you go to the compassionate use programs, what do you get? You get the rag.
It's like the feds come after the growers. All right, why do we protect the growers? Well, because we have to.
Well, in response to you did
Right?
ask a good question though. You asked why are the feds doing it, but the feds have come out and rightly said. Now we can believe them or not. The only thing that they've done is what they've said recently. And what they dictated with the Washington and the Colorado statements and the recent Cole memo is they said if you have these 8 points written into your criteria, we will consider not making you a higher priority. And then you tie that in with the 1256 federal law that's happening. I hear what you're saying, but people are doing these kinds of things. What we have to do is
The wind
have
can
the
shift.
structure built up properly. I think we can all agree. You have to have the infrastructure built up properly. When they get their heads together, when they get their shit together, when they get their minds straight, and they know what they're doing at the federal level, we better have the structure in place, because if we don't, we're gonna wait another 2 years, and another 2 years, and another 2 years. So what we're doing now is building the infrastructure.
You know what we've been-
So if you watched and paid attention to what happened with Amiano and AB 604 that did fail to go to the vote before they
I
went
was there.
on their use. So you saw, did you see what the content of that legislation involved?
I did read it, it was horrible.
So, you know it's gonna be reintroduced in January. So if we don't have some effort that we're doing right now, that's what you're gonna be faced with.
And that's what
And the patients will be allowed to grow for each other.
That's what we constructed in law.
That's what's in the law.
I
And
would
that's
love you to
what's
take
in
an
our
opportunity to do
proposal.
this. You're so passionate, it finds out you probably could have written half of this, because all the things you're
Why
complaining
can't
about,
go
you
on?
wrote in
Because I
here.
get panic attacks over it.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about it. I
So
won't-
let's let him tell us.
I will leave a copy, yeah, I actually have a copy,
have
too,
one
and you
on-
can go online.
Go
right?
online too, correct?
Yes, you always can. We are actually disseminating the taxes and the fees. You mentioned about how is it boosting for them. There's something that's key about what we're doing here, and then I was trying to mention about what the alternative is in January. The AB 604 and some of the legislation related to that would most likely put the ABC in control.
Yeah, I know.
And we all know that.
Don't.
There was an alternative. There was some alternative language is considering another commission. What we've done in this document is we did create the Cannabis Commission. There's been a lot of discussion on whether or not we should retain the ABC, and our determination was that that was not a practical use. They understand drugs, I mean, they understand alcohol, and that's fine, and we may use them, well, yeah, we'll see. We created a
That's in
Cannabis Commission
control.
for a certain reason. We created this commission so it could be autonomous from other departments. It isn't any more costly because we create a commission within the existing departments, whether it's the health, ag, or consumer affairs. You still have to do some training, bring in some new people. So generally, the write-off of the cost of the commission is separate. This commission is exactly what you're looking for. An oversight commission. Initially, the executive director is signed by the governor, but they're elected positions or they're assigned positions with a different term. There's some ways to make sure that it's a very, very independent commission, very similar in some ways to what Colorado did, although Colorado did use their ABC, because their ABC had their shit together. More or less is a simple way.
I called
This is
them
very
up
summarized.
and talked to them about it, it sucks. It's just-
Yeah.
They're on cameras from the minute they sprout a seed till they sell it at the
Yeah.
counter.
But AB 604, and what will be reintroduced in January, January is somewhat similar to that, is what we're probably facing. Now, if there is some other documents such as ours being gathering signatures or potentially on the ballot, that changes the thinking. We're communicating, we're attempting to communicate with them, not getting a lot of cooperation there necessarily, but we're in touch with Steinberg, we're in touch with Lev. We're working at different levels, as we all are. But what we're doing is we're actually doing something at a level that we can have some input. This document, we're putting something to the voters. That's what's different. I'm not talking about anything separate other than we're giving the voters the opportunity to make some decisions. And what we did in this document is we wanted to make sure we covered as much as possible. That lesson we felt we learned from the Inland Empire case. Because the Inland Empire case came out basically, well, you didn't say we couldn't do this, so we're gonna do it. So again, simple. I apologize for my simplicity in breaking these things down, but that's really the reaction. So that's why this was made. Then there was a lot of discussion about length. Well, everybody thinks 25 pages is a long, long, long. What's your basis for that? Nobody reads or understands the length of document. I put it, I think I said it to Shona. Does anybody know how long Prop 8 is? Pretty important proposition, right?
If it's good 25 pages, I'm
It's
for it.
one sentence. So when you talk about length of documents, yeah, Marcy's law and some of those others, much longer laws. There's a 30, 40 page documents out there. So the length of the law is not critical. The purpose and the reason for the length is we want to make sure we address, number one, issues that we were told if you don't address, you get, and number two, what did I say? We're a community-based grassroots document. This is a document of people. Obviously, we cleaned it up from a legal standpoint to make it legislative and practical and ideologically correct. But we wanted to make sure that we got the input from everybody in case we didn't miss something. So once again, what I had said before is we're still doing this today. There's people coming to us, and Ryan and other people know these people, still making suggestions to us to this day. If we can get it in there, let's get it absolutely as current as possible. We already know when it comes time to vote, November 14th, the landscape's going to be different than we're sitting here right now, right? But we have to do our best to get the best document, the infrastructure that we need so that when the cities need to make their decisions, you've got the infrastructure and the guidelines that are presented by the feds, and when the feds make their decisions, we've got the infrastructure that more or less coincides with what they're doing. Massive process. Is it perfect? No. Are they making compromises? Are we making compromises? Yes. Am I a politician? Am I a speaker? None of those things. No, you know what? I'm one of you. But I came on this side of the table a year ago because we weren't getting it done in this state, and we're going to do it now. Now I'm standing in the front of the pack with everybody saying, let's go. We got 65% people saying, let's do this. Okay. So we're going to do it. So I understand your frustration. I understand it because I've worked and I gathered signatures to rescind an ordinance in San Jose that was bullshit. We raised 30,000 signatures to get that off the books. So we're allowing the states and the cities and the municipalities to do their own thing. We're giving you basic guidelines that everybody in the state said was the best. Am I satisfying her every time? No. Am I satisfying you every time? No. Am I satisfying the guy in LA or this and that? Not every single time, but in the grand scheme of things, we've got to put something on here because if we sit on our ass, 16 is going to come, and then it's going to be 2 years later before we get legislation. Are you willing to wait 5 more years? 5 more years? So let's get it on the ballot in 14, get all this infrastructure work done, continue to do it, and let's give the people a chance to vote this in, and then let's make the politicians work. Let's stop being lazy politicians. Let's stop practicing lazy politics or lazy advocacy, for that matter. You know, you're getting to put it, I'm putting a deadline out there for you. The people are putting a deadline out. 65% of them say, let's do this.
I think, like, I could boil it down to this. We have two choices. We can let the state legislator put in really intense restrictions, which will be on the note of Kathleen saying of not, you know, telling you who you can take medicine from and taking out small patient grows and taking away a lot of what we've worked for and basically creating coercive monopolies all across, you know, the state. Or we can do something that we can all participate in and hope that the voters support us. And for me, it's worthwhile to support something for 2014 that puts the taxes on adult use, that acknowledges
That's
the
all
compassionate
great.
providers and doesn't you know, and gives them relief. It doesn't say that everybody has to do it this way. It says for the folks, you know, and I was really happy to work with these guys on the definition of compassionate providers so that the providers who want to do that are not going to be punished for doing that. So I was really happy to give that input in and make sure that there's some relief available because it should be about the patients and getting medicine to everybody regardless of your ability to purchase. And then I think we're really looking at a situation of there's a lot of local politics that it's really hard to transcend. I mean, what's going to happen in the next couple hours is we're going to have our shoved
I
at us,
just-
Yeah.
you
Can I
know?
just look at it from the money point of what they're trying to do here, which is get the money? They want the money.
Under the current rules, you're already having to kind of go under the radar for things, for certain things.
Yeah, we're having to break the rules every day of our living lives.
So-
They
so-
come up for us for our
So
protection.
if the rules change that give a little bit more flexibility, but they still don't work for some people, then some people may still have to go under the radar.
Okay.
And that's just reality.
Okay, all right, okay,
All right. It's gonna change very soon.
You know,
Not
this is
very
the other
soon,
version.
exactly.
This is the other version of the drug
Yes,
war,
let's
right?
focus on-
We're not on the drug war anymore. The drug war is over. The real drug war failed. This is the new internal drug war. We're fighting this war internally to do these kinds of things. If we give up now, when we finally have a stranglehold, when we have the majority opinion, when we have proper legislation starting to be done at these lower levels, we got the feds. If we stop doing all that stuff now, we're basically giving in. When we've got the upper hand right now, people are not realizing we really do.
The local politics, that's what's happening to us in
Stop
the
picking
main
on-
chambers today, is that we couldn't transcend the local politics. We couldn't fight City Hall to make sure that John Avalos isn't putting something in place that will affect every single district and kind of narrow it down, right?
They basically made
So
it.
if we can't transcend the local politics, if we don't have the money and the will, you know, if we're having that problem right here in the first city that was doing permits, taking it to a state level and preventing de facto bans is huge. I mean, to me, part of getting it out to the voters is transcending some of the local play that is hard. And on that note, David Chu just texted me back. Hey, guys.
I'm sorry.
Thanks. That we should go ahead and set up another meeting, which is good. So, you know, after this meeting, we can go and set up another meeting with his secretary. And then, I think we definitely need to have a discussion about outreach and getting people to the table. And I think, you know, just even the discussion of, you know, City Hall thinking that the task force was this huge failure when we're actually gonna be using a lot of the documents we created, in specific, the documents from the cultivation committee, because Supervisor Norman Yee already wants to look at that. So not allowing that sort of talk that, from my perspective, comes from the lobbyists that didn't want that structure to continue because it contained a fair voice for everyone, that we go ahead and we make this working group have some traction and power and not allow sort of that division to come in while we're getting more people to the table for the next meeting. And I think we need to continue the discussion of 2014, and I hope everybody takes the time today to really go online if you haven't read it, and especially for the providers here that have had compassion programs, for people that are really looking at the zoning. I think it's really important to take a look at this, and the best thing is, it's an open source document. If you see something that you don't agree with, you can go right on it, right, and change, right?
Not quite that now. That got a little bit messy, but it is available to us. If you submit recommendations or comments to us, we will make the changes. It is available to us.
Well, 10 by 10 is good for a personal grow, but if you're gonna grow for the club, then it should be at least twice that much.
Then you're a commercial.
You know what I'm saying? No,
That
that's
makes-
hardly a commercial grow. That makes you growing for two people.
No, it makes, but by the,
Or you know what I mean? If 10 by 10 is for you and you grow on, you know what I mean? It's just like, what I'm concerned with is that my growers are not gonna cooperate because they have no legal protection, and that I'm just not gonna have the quality product that I've always had. Okay. That's-
Wasn't there some discussion we specifically had about this issue of legal protection for growers?
Yes, there is
Because
some protection.
we were talking about, the original language had registration, and now you have some anonymization of that information or
That's
something
right.
to
We
protect
made some
that.
of the information anonymous and protected and not allowed to be given out to feds and whatnot too. So built in with the documentation, and we've done that. We've
Is it
protected-
working?
Yes, no,
The protection?
no, you know, it's a great question what you're
Yeah.
asking here. Please don't think that we were naive, and because I put a suit and a tie in here, that I'm sitting at the desk all day long. Trust me, we spent a lot of time up in the animal empire. We spent a lot of time with growers. We know as many. Dave Hodges is one of the proponents to open the first collective in San Jose. So trust me, we know we're in deep as anybody needs to know. Are we
Oh,
getting
yeah.
full cooperation from all the growers? Not necessarily, but several of them have given us language and
Several.
understand that this is inevitable. This is inevitable in our lifetime, as we know. If it doesn't happen because we're doing it,
It
it's gonna
puts us in
happen.
the middle though, as the provider, to the patients. It puts us in the middle of trying to get, we're the ones now, we're gonna be
Yeah.
put in the position,
Well,
we're gonna have to get the growers right to get on
Do we,
board. It's
but
like-
we wanna have our hand in that is the point. The whole point is, do we wanna have our hand in that? Do we wanna
I
control?
don't
We
feel
may
I
not
can
have perfect
continue in
control.
this line of work.
Or, you know,
No
you may want to-
legislation is perfect, but this is so getting close to almost perfect. I've never been this excited. And I mean, in the past 10 years, I've looked at a lot of policy, and I've seen the way a lot of policy gets made, and it's really sad and horrible, and it literally makes me cry. And this is like one of the few things that's kept me from a severe depression, so I really.
Yeah, there's a funny quote, there are two things you don't want to see made, and that's sausage and, you know, laws, right?
I am really riled up about this. It's a reflection to me of a lot of the short-term, shallow victories that a lot of the monopolists are trying to do statewide, locally. Just the other day, I got a call from a collective in San Jose who's also being targeted for serving poor people, and the other clubs are meeting and trying to find a way to push this club off the map too. And it's pathetic.